Hi guys, welcome to the interesting video on Wild Rifts. We're back with a Vayne complete guide. Now, I actually wanted to make this last patch, but right before we patched over to 2.4, see I had an amazing Vayne gameplay, but we patched over and I lost that gameplay because obviously replays do not carry over patches. But regardless, we're going to be covering Vayne today, and I have been actually playing quite a bit of Vayne. Now, Vayne has come a long way from being... Actually, technically, Vayne was like the best Baron laner at the very start of the game, but most of you may not have even started playing yet. And then she got nerfed to the ground, and then she slowly got buffed, slowly got buffed into where she was in an okay state already. And after she got the new 2.4 items, she's in a pretty good state. Like, she's very viable. I wouldn't say she's like S plus tier or S tier, but I would say she's like top of A tier, and I would say that she is very viable at the moment. Now, the reason why she's not top tier is because she only works into specific lane matchups and into specific comps to get the most value out of her, so she doesn't really do well in every single matchup. Of course, there are some like Vayne 1 tricks who will pick Vayne in every matchup, and if you're really good at Vayne, it really does show. Now, I'm not the best at Vayne, but I would say that I'm definitely way above average, and you know, Vayne is a really just a 1v9 champion, but she only does single target damage. She doesn't do any form of AoE damage, unlike majority of other ADCs, which is kind of her weakness, as well as her range being very short, which is her weakness. But you know, she shreds tanks and she does insane amounts of damage when she's fed and in the late game, so you really cannot do anything about her as she runs you down. So without further ado, let's quickly jump into the practice mode to cover her skills, abilities, and her leveling order. So, first up, we'll discuss the leveling order. So, at level 1, you always want to take your tumble, which is your Q. So, first up, we're going to disable the enemy bots. So, you always want to take your tumble at level 1. The reason for this is, at level 1, you can actually tumble auto-attack your enemies to actually start poking from level 1. Now, you won't see that in the gameplay later, because we are leashing for our jungler, but in the event that you don't have to leash, if you walk straight to lane, you can actually just start poking enemies out with your tumble. And then at level 2, you will always take your W, which is your silver bolts, and unless you're already in a fight and you desperately need CC, in which case you'll take your third ability, but that is very rarely the case. And then at level 3, of course, you'll take your E. Then you proceed on to max your W first, and of course you take your ult whenever you can. After you max W, you go for your Q max, and of course take your ult whenever you can. And then lastly, you will max your E. So pretty easy, pretty simple. So as usual, we're gonna go to our usual spot to show off all her abilities. So her passive is honestly pretty simple. She basically just gains movement speed towards enemies. So there's a very obvious indicator, which I will show you in a bit. So here, let's put on an enemy dummy. So here, as you guys can see, at Vayne's feet, there is nothing. If I walk towards an enemy, there is sort of like a pulse at Vayne's feet. So if I walk away, there's nothing. If I walk towards, there's a pulse. So I do gain like a little bit of movement speed. So her Q, it's pretty simple. It's just a roll, and it enhances your next auto attack. So like that, you roll a short distance and you auto attack like that. You can not roll over walls like that. You will just roll into the wall. You cannot roll over the wall. That is something to take note of. And your next auto attack is enhanced for quite a while. Your W is actually what you see at the bottom of the enemy speed. So here, 1 stack, 2 stack. At 3 stacks, it will explode and do 3% of the enemy's max health as true damage. So, you know, of course, it cannot be mitigated by any kind of defenses, which is why she shreds tanks. And if you activate your W, you will gain attack speed as well as heal for 60% of the damage that you do. So, like that, you gain attack speed, like that. So that's what it does. And for your E, it is actually a knockback. So like that. First, I'm going to show it like this. Put a ward here just in case he goes into the bush. So you just push the enemy back like so. But it also applies a stack of silver bolts. But if you knock the enemy into a wall, the enemy will get stunned for 1.5 seconds. So this is a very important point of CC, which is very hard to actually get off regularly, because you have to have a wall and your positioning has to be good. So boom, stun for 1.5 seconds. What you can sometimes do is, for example, if I am here and I want to condemn the enemy into that thin wall over there, I'm out of position here, I can actually tumble into position and then condemn into the wall, like so. So her ult basically does a couple of things. Her ult firstly gives her some extra AD. Other than that, it actually enhances her passive as well as her tumble. So with the ult, as you guys can see, I'm walking towards the enemies with her passive movement speed. When I ult, I get a lot more movement speed towards the enemies, and as well as on my tumble, I'm invisible. Of course, for 1 second. If you auto attack before that 1 second, like if I tumble auto attack, it does break the invisibility, but if not, you are invisible for 1 second. Now, a thing to note with the ult is that if you get a kill, it extends your ult duration by 4 seconds, up to a maximum of 8 seconds. So if you get 2 kills or assists, you can actually increase your ult duration by just 8 more seconds, which is a considerable amount of time. So with all that out of the way, honestly, that Vayne doesn't really have any combos or what, other than maybe condemn, tumble condemn. Other than that, she's just a basic auto attack champion. So with Vayne, let's actually, before we discuss that, let's quickly move on to the builds and the runes as well as the spells. So Vayne normally wants to build attack speed. Now, attack damage is not as important for Vayne. So let's get into the build like that. So attack speed is the most important. As you guys can see, 35% attack speed, 30% attack speed, 35% attack speed. So the most important stat for Vayne is attack speed. Now the reason you want to get attack speed is so that you can attack faster onto a single target, and you can proc your silver bolts faster, because your main point of damage is your silver bolts. It's not really your actual auto attacks, or it's not really your crit. It's more so the silver bolts passive of the true damage. So for your first item, you will always want to go for the Blade of the Rune King. Now, honestly, there is a couple of reasons for this. First up, we have attack speed, which is of course what we want. A little bit of AD thrown into the mix. Next, we of course really want the physical vamp. Now, the reason you want the physical vamp is because Vayne, like Kai'Sa, is a very close quarter kind of AD carry, much like Kai'Sa and Lucian. Her attack range is very low, so you're going to be in the enemy's faces and in danger. So you want to have high amounts of lifesteals to sustain yourself. And other than that, she also gets the movement speed when you attack people 3 times. So that combos with her passive to chase enemies down. And lastly, you actually get the max health shred on the enemies with the ruin strikes. So that of course does synergize with her W passive, or silver bolts passive, so for even more tank shred. So she's the ultimate tank shredder champion. So this is the best first item for Vayne. Now for the second item, you always want to go for the Solari Chargeblade. Now you want to go for Solari Chargeblade because of course it gives you the attack speed. You get other nice stats like ability haste and crit rate as well. But as you guys already know, we have the Sunburst passive, where you get a stack of radiance every time you cast an ability, and this is great on champions that spam abilities. Who spams abilities? Vayne, because her tumble in the later stages of the game is going to be in like a 2-second kind of cooldown, so you're going to be spamming it a lot. So you're always going to have stacks of Solari Chargeblade, which makes it a really great item for Vayne. So that is what you want to go for. And normally for my boots, I actually don't go for Gluttonous Greaves. Normally for my boots, I actually go for defensive boots. So I normally either go for, oops, that ain't it. So I normally either go for plated seal caps or Mercury's Treads. Of course, Mercury's Treads if the enemy team has like 1 to 2 big sources of magic damage plus a lot of sources of CC. And plated steel caps if the enemy team has a lot of physical damage, then of course I want to get more physical defense with my boots. Now, I don't go for the Gluttonous Greaves because I feel that the lifesteal from your W, from your Blade of the Rune King, as well as together with your Hunter Vampirism is enough lifesteal for Vayne. And I don't actually think that Vayne takes does need to take Gluttonous Greaves. Of course you can if you want to. So your boot options are basically the 2 defensive boots as well as the Gluttonous Greaves if you want to. And for your boot enchant, you actually normally go for Quicksilver enchant because you're always in the enemy's faces, so you have a very high chance of getting targeted by the enemy and getting CC. So you want to get the Quicksilver to cleanse any of the CC that comes your way. But if the enemy team is full of knockups, and doesn't have any like stuns and roots that you can actually use your Quicksilver on, of course then you go for stasis, because when you are in the faces of the enemy team, the time you buy with your stasis can actually save your life, because your teammates can rotate to you, help you out, or your skills can come back up, and you can just basically have more outplay potential against the enemy, or more safety as well. So after that, you'll go for a Phantom Dancer. The shield from the Phantom Dancer is really helpful, where it can basically save you when you're in the midst of a fight. Then finally, we actually go for a non-attack speed item, which is our Infinity Edge as our second last item. Gives you that injection of AD if you get to that stage of the game, as well as increased crit damage, because we already have full crit with these three crit items and the Solari Chargeblade. So 100% crit chance. Increasing the crit damage will always be good. And for the last item, of course, we go for Guardian Angel for both the armor, AD, as well as, of course, our Resurrection passive. Now, Vayne actually has a lot of itemization options that you can actually go for. Now, we actually can go for Static Shift instead of Phantom Dancer if you are very ahead. The Static Shift can be really good as well, just to get more AoE damage, because Vayne doesn't have any form of AoE damage. But personally, I very rarely go for the Static Shift, because even when I'm a hit, I generally still go for the Phantom Dancer. I just think that it's way better. You can also go for Rapid Fire Cannon. So basically here it's one of the crit trio of the Rapid Fire Cannon, Phantom Dancer, or the Phantom Dancer. So I personally always go for the Phantom Dancer. You did also note that actually Vayne does not actually build Molar Reminder. And the reason is that she doesn't actually need armor penetration, because she actually does true damage. So there is really no point in buying any kind of armor penetration. So you don't really go for Serralda's Grudge or Molar Reminder. So there is no need for that. I think I should mention that in the video just in case anyone is wondering. Now, for your last item option, you actually have multiple options other than the Guardian Angel. If you feel like you need it, you can actually go for Death's Dance instead. Now this, of course, sometimes between a GA and a Death's Dance, it's sort of like a personal preference thing. Of course, by the time you get to your last item, the Costerize passive is going to do a lot for you, because you're going to delay the damage you take, and you have already a lot of lifesteal. You most likely would have fully charged your Hunter Vampirism by then, and combined with your W active as well as your Blade of the Rune King, you would have a lot of lifesteal. Together with the Death's Dance, you had even more lifesteal to just lifesteal back all the damage that you take. So Death's Dance is another option over here. And another option for your last item is actually your Wit's End. Now, Wit's End gives you 45% attack speed, which is the most attack speed out of any item, and it gives you 50 magic resistance, as well as when you are below 50% health, you will actually it will actually heal you for 35% of the damage you deal, as well as dealing on-hit magic damage. So Wit's End is another option into a AP heavy team. Now, as a matter of fact, you can actually go for Wit's End early as well. If let's say you're into let's say a Corki bot, let's say we have a Katarina mid, and let's say it's a Evelyn in the jungle, like 3 huge AP sources, you can actually go for Wit's End as like your second item. It wouldn't be a bad option at all. So you can also go for Wit's End earlier, but honestly, in the current meta, you generally don't go into a lot of AP heavy teams. So generally, you don't really opt into Wit's End very often. But if you are in a matchup that you require it, you can of course do so. But personally, this is the build I go for like 90% of games, unless I need to adapt it with all the changes that I have already mentioned. Now, aside from these, we're not going to cover the runes. So now for the Keystone rune, here we actually have a discussion on our hands. There is actually 2 possible Keystone runes that you can take. So first up, we have Conqueror. So now, the thing about Conqueror is a lot more late game team fight focused, because it's very easy to stack up to your 5 stacks with Conqueror and gain the, bonus adaptive damage when you stack it fully. But you also have another option, which is Fleet Footwork. Now, the reason you want to also consider Fleet Footwork is for 2 reasons. Firstly, your laning phase is absolutely horrible, so Fleet Footwork actually makes your laning phase a lot better, because you can actually heal yourself with the Fleet Footwork. Now, aside from that, Vayne moves a lot, so your stacks build when you move, and when she tumbles, it actually counts into the stack, so she can proc Fleet Footwork very often, even in late game team fights. But the reason why I don't think it's very useful in late game team fights is because you already have enough sustain from your your 3 sources, which is of course your Death's Dance, not your Death's Dance, your Blade of the Rune King, your Hunter Vampirism, as well as your W active, so I don't actually think you need this sustain for the late game, but this is for more of a laning phase. Personally, I like to focus more on the late game, so I will go for Conqueror. Sorry, why did there we go. I will go for Conqueror. Now, for the second rune, you always want to go for Hunter Vampirism. Of course, as I mentioned, you need that for your lifesteal just to survive longer and for your dueling potential. And for the next one, I always take Hunter Titan. Now, the reason I take Hunter Titan, I need the tenacity. So, when you fully stack, you actually have 20% tenacity, which will help a great deal because you're very, very likely to get CC'd a lot. Now, other than that, I think all the other options are inferior compared to the Hunter Titan, so I don't actually go for anything else. Likewise, for the last one, I always go for Sweet Tooth and nothing else. So pretty much the minor runes are all fixed, but the major rune, you actually do have a choice between Conqueror and Fleet Forward. Now this depends on your personal playstyle, but I personally always prefer to go for Conqueror and not Fleet Footwork. It sounds like Akali. Akali can go for both Fleet Footwork and Conqueror as well. It sort of depends on your personal playstyle, so I think going Fleet Footwork is completely fine, just that I personally just prefer the Conqueror. So for the spells, of course, you always go for Flash. And now on Vayne, I actually go for Barrier, honestly, 100% of the time. Because since you're always in the fight, your Barrier is going to get a lot of value from protecting you from a huge source of damage, basically. Of course, your other option is, as usual, the ADC option, which is Heal. I don't actually ever go for Heal on Vayne, just because I'm always in the enemy team. But it's also an option, you know, if you need it for your support, but I always go for Barrier myself. So if all that out of the way, we can finally move on to the gameplay. Alright, so on to the gameplay. Now, you guys already know what I'm going to say here. As usual for our complete guides, when we move on to the gameplay, if you guys like what you're seeing, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So, first up, I'm going to talk about why I drafted Vayne in this match. Now, as you guys can see in the enemy team, we have Blitzcrank, Xin Zhao, Wukong, and Renekton. Now, none of them are true tanks, but all of them are tanky champions. So, I'm against 4 tanky champions and a Kai'Sa. So, this is a very, very good matchup for me. So, now here, I started off by leashing my jungler. So, now, I gave him 3 auto attacks. And now, the reason I give him 3 auto attacks is that if you give 3 auto attacks, you guarantee last hitting the first minion, as you guys can see over here. If you give 4 auto attacks, you have a high chance of getting the first minion last hit, but it's not guaranteed, but you guaranteed get the gold and XP from passively from the minion dying if you give 4 auto attacks. If you give 5 auto attacks, you likely will lose the first minion. So only give 3 to 4 auto attacks when leashing. This is the case for every single ADC, not just Vayne. So that's just something to take note of. So as you can see, I of course have taken Q at level 1 and W at level 2, as I've mentioned. And, you know, back to the discussion on picking Vayne. So, Vayne actually has very good matchups into, of course, a tanky team, which is what this is, of course. But she also has very good matchups into low-range AD carries. Now, low-range AD carries are basically only, like, Kai'Sa and Lucian, essentially. So, she has very good matchups into Kai'Sa and Lucian. Aside from that, she also has a good matchup into late-game AD carries, like, for example, a Jinx or a Fasting Senna, for example. She has a very, very bad matchup into, like, something like a Draven or a Varus, an Ezreal. So yeah. Yeah. So in this game, it's really good for Vayne. Of course, I'm against a Kai'Sa who's a low-range AD carry, so I'm way more mobile than her because she only has a speed up. Here, we condemn Blitzcrank into the wall, and Blitzcrank goes for the Nami, so they managed to trade Nami. We trade Nami for Blitzcrank, but here, I'm actually going to go onto the Kai'Sa, and I have to flash forward for the Kai'Sa. We both barrier, because if not, I will die to the minion aggro, so I had to flash away from the enemy minion, so here we get the easy kill. So as I was saying, I'm against a Kai'Sa, which is a low-range AD carry. I'm way more mobile than her, so I can easily, you know, just move around and, you know, just get my damage off, because we are both the same range. And on the enemy team, Vayne is actually really good in Xin Zhao, because you are very close anyway, so Xin Zhao's ultimate doesn't do that much to you. You generally just roll into his ultimate and just damage him. Blitzcrank can't do much to you unless, of course, you get hooked, then you're pretty much screwed. And Wukong is probably Wukong and Renekton is probably the biggest issue, because if they get on you, you can get CC'd and you're just destroyed afterwards. But it's fine for this game. You will see later on that if Renekton tries to come close to me, I will just condemn him away. And Wukong engage, honestly, is impossible to avoid because he just spins on your head and there's nothing much you can do. Here Nami a little bit out of position, so instead of helping her out, I'm actually removing the Kai'Sa from the equation, but unfortunately Nami gets knocked out, so Kai'Sa gets to ult away. If not, I probably got the kill onto the Kai'Sa there. Here Blitzcrank hook is blocked by the minion, and actually Nunu comes in. Unfortunately my ult runs out, but I'm still, you know, in the area to just pick up the assist onto the Kai'Sa, and you know, Nunu dies, so there's not much I can do. I've also run out of mana. Now, a thing about Vayne is that Vayne kind of runs out of mana in lane if you stay too long in lane. It's not a huge issue, it's not like a Corki or a Misfortune kind of mana issue, but if you stay in lane for an extended period of time, you will actually face, you know, some form of mana issues, because she will tumble a lot. As you can see, the tumble consumes a decent amount of mana, and as does all her other spells. So that is definitely something you want to, you know, be wary of, that you can actually run out of mana relatively easily. So yeah, so we're just gonna back here. We did have 2 kills and an assist already, so we're going to restore our mana, pick up our Blade of the Rune King, as well as some boots. Now in this game, obviously we want to go for armor boots, because there is no real AP in that team except from like the Kai'Sa passive, so it's mostly just an AD comp, so we definitely are going for the plated steel caps. Here, of course, we can see that there is a kind of a fight happening at the dragon area. Nami gets a nice knockup, and I get the last hit. Condemn Kai'Sa into the wall, and Kai'Sa's just gone. There she goes for a really nice double kill, and our Fizz has rotated, so we can easily pick up the dragon. Unfortunately, our Nunu is really low, so he has to actually consume onto the dragon to actually restore his health. Here, I'm just going on the Xin Zhao, so he has a hard time contesting the dragon, and me and Fizz both have the same idea. We both flash for the Xin Zhao. You know, Fizz gets the kill because he flashed before me, and I'm just going to run down the Wukong, of course, with my passive movement speed, and we are now really fat. We're 5-0 and 2, and I believe since we actually encountered everybody except the Renekton, we actually have our Hunter Vampirism nearly fully stacked, and it's only like 5 minutes into the game. So meanwhile, the Renekton as well as our Irelia is just simply duking it out in the top lane area. So you will realize as we progress into the game that this game is a really hard carry by Vayne. Vayne has the potential to carry a team super duper hard. She's one of the hardest. She's one of the AD carries that can carry the hardest in the entire game. The others, of course, being like Kai'Sa or like Jinx late game kind of thing, but she can carry super hard. So you will see later that we will be just carrying our team on our backs. So we have also managed to get our armor boots, get our crit cloak. Armor boots have such high value against this team comp, so picking it up early is definitely the way to go. So of course our bot lane has rotated, so we're just gonna ping enemy missing. So now the entire enemy team has actually rotated for the Herald here. So here this actually happens very often if one team secures the dragon and the Herald is up. Sometimes both it'll end up being a 5v5 at the Herald. Now as a bot lane that's opposite from the Herald, you have really 2 options. Your first option is to rotate for the Herald fight, and you'll possibly give your team an advantage or possibly just make it even, or your second option is to simply just push the tower, which is what we're choosing to do here. Here, Kai'Sa tries some fancy tricks like ulting away from me to the Nami, but she just she just dies because I do too much damage. So here, I have to walk on a long way around because our minion wave has evaporated, and if I walk through the tower, I'll take 2 tower shots and I'll die. So I have to walk on a long way around, coming around. Of course, look at the lifesteal that I get just from attacking the minions. That, of course, comes from my Blade of the Rune King as well as my Hunter Vampirism, which is almost fully stacked. So just gonna pick up the enemy honey fruit to remain healthy, and we're gonna pick up the tower. Now, of course, it's a little bit unfortunate because the enemies have already picked up the first tower of the game in the top lane, because our Irelia is not doing too hot. She's 1 and 2, so unfortunately we don't actually pick up first tower, but we do actually just pick up our bot lane tower. Now this frees us up to actually rotate into the other lanes. So here we're doing very well against the Kai'Sa Blitzcrank. Kai'Sa is 2-4 and 1. Blitzcrank is 1, 2, and 4. So doing really well here. So now there is a huge fight going on in the mid lane. Our Fizz has just died. Nunu wants to go in. So here, if you guys can see, we actually see Kai'Sa pushing in the bot lane. So what we need here is a decisive team fight victory, which is not what we're really getting. We do get a pick under the Xin Zhao. TP comes in from the Renekton to actually stop us from pushing. Nice Nami, 3-man Nami bubble, but honestly I do believe that we have lost the trade, because we have traded they've traded Xin Zhao's life for Kai'Sa getting a full tower. So Kai'Sa gets a huge injection of gold, which is definitely what she needs considering she's on the back foot. She already has her Q evolve, as you can see. She has the BF Sword, the Maul Reminder, and the Blade of the Rune King, which does give her a Q evolve. She's almost to her E evolve already. Of course, she's going for the optimal Kai'Sa build of, rushing her evolutions first. So she does know what she's building. She knows what she's doing. So we definitely don't want to give the Kai'Sa any leeway, if not she can become, of course, a problem as with anybody else. Now, somebody else who is a problem is actually the Renekton, who's 2-0 and 3. Now, we haven't actually interacted with him this entire game yet, which is kind of fortunate for us, because he is doing very, very well. Of course, we're 6-0 and 3 as well, with our Solari Chargeblade completed by this point. So we are actually also doing incredibly well. So here, the entire enemy team actually goes for a gank onto the Irelia. So they basically just collapse on Irelia. Irelia is pushed up way too far. So instead of trying to help her, we can't really even help her. We're just going to rotate for the dragon. So here, Xin Zhao has unknowingly actually overextended. He gets hit by the Fizz out, gets chunked out by me, and Fizz finishes off the job, and this will secure us a free dragon. So Nunu actually placing the Herald mid as well to force even more pressure onto the mid lane. No idea what was that Nunu snowball. I guess he got grabbed by Blitzcrank, I assume is what happened. But our entire team is here. There's nothing too much to be afraid of. Can cover for him, and we easily pick up our second dragon of the game. So at this point in time, we have picked up both of the side lane first tier towers. So we of course have to go for the mid lane. Unfortunately, our Herald doesn't actually manage to collapse into the mid lane tower. We have managed to use the Herald just for strictly just the distraction, so that they don't rotate for dragon. Here I've actually picked up the Blitzcrank, but unfortunately my entire team evaporates, and my first interaction with Renekton is, dying basically. So don't want to mess with the Renekton. Kai'Sa gets a triple kill, which pretty much brings her back into the game, and Wukong picks up a kill as well. So Kai'Sa has gone from like 2-4 and 2. She's now 7-4 and 2. So in like a matter of minutes, she has managed to flip the game, and now we have only Irelia up on the map, and enemy team manages to push on all the way towards the inhibitor for the mid lane. So Nunu is back. Of course, he's going to try to engage with his snowball, and he does engage with his snowball. Here I've actually respawned. I'm just going to be showing what happens with Nunu, Irelia, and Wukong. Now I will say Irelia honestly not doing too well this match. Her mechanics are not really very good. You can see that she goes in with her Q before getting any marks, so she can't actually reset her Q, so she isn't doing too well. So of course we're going to have to carry her for the victory. We pick up the red buff, of course, for the slow and the damage. And our team is a skirmish is kind of breaking out in the mid lane. So here I see a window. I condemn Renekton onto the wall and get off my true damage onto him. Here I'm gonna try to focus on Renekton, and we do get the kill on the Renekton. Then we focus on the Blitzcrank. Nunu technically KSing me for both kills. Here Kai'Sa gets an entire isolated Q on me, and I have to stasis, and boom, Kai'Sa gets outplayed by the stasis, and I get the huge shutdown goal. Now if I didn't stasis there, Kai'Sa definitely finishes me off with her next auto attack. But fortunately for me, I do stasis. Kai'Sa actually mistimes her E. If she timed her E correctly, she could actually have gotten the kill on me there. So essentially she got outplayed. She messed up her E. Wukong tries to go in with his ultimate for some reason, but he's against a 9-1 and 6 Vayne, so I instantly evaporate him. His health bar is gone. So here I'm just gonna recall. No point walking any further back. Just recalling this spot. If Blitzcrank wants to hook me, nothing too much is gonna come of it. Here I can pick up my Phantom Dancer as well as my stasis. Of course, not my stasis. I already had my stasis. I can pick up my Phantom Dancer as well as a longsword. Of course, building towards the Infinity Edge. So in this game, I'm just going for that standard build that I have showed you guys in the item builds earlier. Nothing too fancy. So now Xin Zhao actually comes over. Fizz whiffs his ultimate and also reveals our location, so that's not too hot. We see Renekton in the mid lane. I'm going to try to actually get him. I can easily run him down as long as he's not engaging on me. Vayne actually, not Vayne. In this match, I'm actually going to win against the Renekton as long as I'm the one chasing him. But if he's the one engaging onto me and stunning me and all, I will be in trouble. So I want to be engaging on him and not the other way around here. Blitzcrank could have actually potentially hooked me there, but he doesn't, and I would have actually been in huge trouble. So here, this is sort of just a very scuffed engage. So we're trying to collapse on the Wukong, but that fails miserably. So we don't actually get the collapse on the Wukong. The Wukong is actually relatively healthy. Now the enemy team, you turned around to actually get a collapse off onto our Irelia. Now we're gonna sort of counter collapse onto the enemy team, and Kaisa is actually late to the party because Kaisa is still trying to walk over. So here we have a brief window to actually just destroy the enemy team before reinforcements arrive. I get the kill onto the Xin Zhao. Wukong has arrived to the party. I'm attacking the clone. Now I'm gonna focus the Kaisa, of course, getting off my passive, but unfortunately, you know, she barrels and it chunks her like 1/3 of her health, which is a huge amount of damage. So here Renekton comes in, I condemn him into the wall, and he gets exhausted, nearly dies, but unfortunately we don't manage to pick up the kill. Here Wukong as well, he goes into stasis. We don't manage to pick him up either, but we're just gonna push the lane. So here enemy team is all chunked, they have to recall, so we're gonna actually pick up both the mid lane and the top lane towers, and instead me and Nunu are gonna actually just do the dragon in the meantime. So we get 3 huge objectives on the map at the same time. You know, just good macro by the team overall. So we do pick up the Cloud Dragon. Now we have 3 dragons, and yeah. So now, if you guys actually didn't notice, I didn't actually mention this throughout the game. Actually, we are at a goal deficit throughout the game, and the goal actually only swung in our favor, like just. So here, I actually want to pick up the red buff. I'm pinging it to Nunu, but Nunu it just consumes the red buff and doesn't give it to me. Now, if you're the jungler, don't do this. You have a 10-1 and 680 carry, and you know you're a Nunu. You're not even an AD champion, so the red buff on you is not even going to be half as effective as it is on your AD carry. So just don't steal your AD carry's red buff. So anyways, here we're just gonna go for the Baron. We can rush it down really quickly. Vayne melts the Baron as well, because she also does true damage to the Baron with her W passive. So here, as you guys can see, melt the Baron really quickly. I'm also actually rolling into the wall just to get off my damage faster. You can actually Q into the wall to get your damage off faster, so you cancel the animation of your Q. So here Xin Zhao actually tries to jump in, and you know he just dies because I condemn him into the wall. Here I'm going for the Kaisa. I can half health her with 3 auto attacks. So here she goes into stasis, I finish her off, and Renekton is here. I'm gonna have to condemn him away from me just because I don't want him to be standing on top of me because he gets too much damage off. And as you guys can see, I lifesteal everything back. Combined with the honey fruit, I'm back at full health. And here the enemy team has been aced, so we can easily just end the game. They actually just surrender instead, so we don't actually manage to end the game, but you know it's the same regardless. So here we have a really hard carry by Vayne. You guys will see from the stats, which I'll be putting up really soon. You can see we get an S, and we do so much damage. So anyways guys, thank you guys for watching the video, and goodbye.